advocacy and awareness trust, a governance, development, and women rights enthusiast and practitioner with several years of experience working in this field. Madam Daisy is a renowned and active citizen and champion for good governance and women's full inclusion in governance and political processes, and encourages women across the country to get involved in political and governance processes at every level, from the grassroots to the national level, to bring women's perspectives into decision-making organs, to harness women's potential in political and economic spheres. And last but not least, Mr. Bruno Ortiato, renowned for his indelible mark of ink, intelligent grasp of current economic and political affairs, and distinguished status as a writer. Mr. Bruno Ortiato is a political scientist, having graduated from the University of Nairobi on 11th December 2020 with a bachelor's degree in political science and public administration. He is also a writer with the Standard newspaper. We are all reminded of a concurrent moving discussion online through our social media platforms, Twitter at @iconscholar_u, under the hashtag IMF and the Kenyan economy. So to start us off, perhaps the panelists can just give us their general feel of the topic of discussion today, starting by Dr. Wahoro Ndohho. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Maybe a quick correction. I'm not yet a doctor. I wish I was, but I was too busy trying to raise a family. But I'm thinking of doing precisely that. Yes, just by way of introduction, yes, for all the things I've done. My initial feeling is that context is everything. And while Kenya has had a very interesting run, this IMF, you're basically in the beginnings of what I'd call a debt trap. You get to a point where you do not earn enough, and so you have to borrow both to pay back old debt and old obligations, but also to just put food on the table. And unfortunately for us as a country, that's where we are. But it's not all dark. There's also hope, because at the same time that they're doing that, it's important to also realize the context in which Kenya has done this. Kenya has been on a 20-year building boom or building frenzy to catch up on its assets in terms of infrastructure. Now, it could be said that they've gone overboard. We probably could have done it better, but that has also been particularly important for enabling our economy to in a sense, get ready to take off in terms of growth. But that being said, of course, the rest of the discussion will be whether or not this is really the best way to have done it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wahoro Ndohho, for that and for the correction as well. Perhaps we can quickly move to Madam Daisy Amdany.
Good evening, and thank you for having me in this discussion. It's a pleasure to be here, to be with you all. My first thoughts really about this whole IMF situation and the Kenyans' reactions to it, I think is one that Kenyans' energies and anger is misdirected. And I think it is very important that we direct our energies to the right place. Where we are right now, Kenya as a country is in financial distress, meaning that we are not able to meet our debt obligations, and we are also not able to meet our recurrent obligations. So we are struggling as a country. But we didn't get here by accident. I think for the past, since 2014, if you look at the budgets, we have been running deficit budgets. And the unrealistic revenue targets and the development spending that has been targeted at infrastructure that is now showing years down the line to have very little returns, and the borrowing against much of that development was commercial, meaning short-term and expensive. So I think that in terms of where we need to direct our energies, we need to look at the representatives of the people. We need to look at the custodians of the public purse who have allowed us to get to this place. And I want to agree that it is not all doom and gloom, because if we direct our energies correctly, there is opportunity for recovery despite the serious situation that has been further exacerbated by COVID. COVID, by the way, is absolutely not the reason why we are where we are. It has simply made a bad situation worse. It was bad even before COVID came along, and just because of recklessness. So I think that this is an important discussion, especially in light of, the way Kenyans have been behaving, bombarding the IMF and everything. And it may look, we may be entertained by it. But right now, I think one of the things that we should appreciate is that IMF is there, because what they're doing is they're actually helping, they're stopping us from complete collapse, And so we do have to, I think that we do need to be responsible. And as young economists, by the way, I'm not an economist, but one of the things I always tell everybody is that there are two things that people must acquaint themselves with. One is the law and the Constitution, because we are all bound by the Constitution and the laws. So we need to know them so that, we know how to engage. And the economy. Economics is considered a very esoteric discipline, and people are afraid because of numbers. Yet, economics has such a huge impact on our daily lives, And of course, you can see now where we are, as our country, we are now in the fiscal headroom is completely, I mean, it's not even there. Actually, there's no fiscal headroom. So we really need to look at this. We need to look at what IMF, let's break down who IMF are and what the IMF program for Kenya is about, and then pick up from there in terms of being able to direct our energies in the right place. And you know where the right place is? Parliament. Those are the guys that we need to be directing our energies to. So I will stop there and allow others, and I'll ask that you allow me to turn off my camera, because I've been having issues with my internet and all, and I'm worried that it might just decide to do me a number. So I will speak without turning on my camera when it comes to my turn. I hope that's okay, Stanley. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Madam Daisy. It's totally fine. You can engage with us without turning on your camera. Some really good sentiments there, worth reflecting upon and noting as well. At this point, I would like to welcome Mr. Bruno Ortiato to share his sentiments as well.
Thank you, Stanley, for the invitation from you guys, and like to also say that I'm privileged and humbled to share the platform with these great Kenyans, and it's very hard to speak after they have really spoken, especially after what Daisy was talking about. But I would want to look at it from two angles, probably from as a political scientist, and also as a unionist, because I work for a trade union, for COTU. So I'm trying to look at it from that angle. And as a political scientist, I'm looking at it from the area of governance, which Daisy really mentioned and talked about how we have this what psychologists call displaced aggression, where we are angry at the wrong person, you know, trying to petition IMF to withdraw the facility that they had granted us, yet this is a process that had been initiated by and allowed by Parliament, considering it's Parliament that approves such, and also looking at what we actually do with our current loan facilities that we have as a country, because I believe, you know, they normally say that show me a rich man or a rich country and I'll show you loan or debt. So it's very hard to develop economically or otherwise unless you are tapping into debt and the debt facility, considering it helps you kind of leverage in terms of economic income and the outcome in terms of expenditure, and also helps you kind of grow in terms of financially, or for example, now in Kenya, now economically. As a unionist, I would like to look at it at the toll it's having on the human resource. For instance, if you are to look at some of the measures that IMF are calling out, are trying to advise us to do. And I mean, also looking at what Daisy had mentioned earlier, the history of IMF, you know, with the structural adjustment programs in the 1990s. Of course, during the push of multi-party democracy and all that, and what that really meant, and how it also affected some institutions that have not yet been able to recover from the shock that they underwent then, and what it means to some of the institutions that are being mentioned left, center, and right now. For example, Kenya Airways, Kenya Airports Authority, and even our prestigious university, you know, it's being mentioned and it's in the limelight, and people are talking about the University of Nairobi. So we need to also look at that. What does it really mean? And also trying to understand why Kenya might also be going for such facilities. So yeah, that's my kind of introductory remarks, so to say.
Thank you, Bruno, as well. I would move to Madam Daisy at this point, and I would pose a question. What are your thoughts on this? Can multinational organizations be termed as agents of economic growth in developing countries?
I'm not even sure that I understand your question very well when you talk about multinationals. And are you suggesting that IMF is a multinational?
That is the implied suggestion.
Okay, so this is now where I want to come, and I like what was said earlier on about context. So I want us to understand who IMF are before we start thinking of them as a multinational. Because, you know, you think about multinationals. When I think multinationals, I think of guys like Coca-Cola and, you know, those big corporations, right? Multinational corporations. But the IMF, it's a membership institution, okay? Kenya is actually a member of the IMF, okay? Think of it like, you know, like a cooperative, yeah? So you bring people together, right? So IMF is a membership country, and it's run by members, an executive board that are nominated by the members. And each member country, member countries actually nominate that executive directors who sit now on that board. So you've got 24 directors, and those 24 directors are drawn from the member states themselves. So you have, relative to the size of the economy, you have the big countries. These are the countries like US and China and Japan, France, Germany, and I think Saudi Arabia. They sit there, they each have an executive director, and of course theirs is a reflection of the size of their economy and their contribution to the IMF. And then you have the other 183 countries, because the members are 190. So you have the other 183 countries that are grouped into categories. So you have 17 categories. And so those 17 categories then have their executive directors. Those are the ones who run the IMF day to day. So Kenya is among the categories, one of the categories in Africa, because Africa has about four or five categories. I'm not sure. That's something I would have to look up, but you can always look it up, right? And the IMF is accountable to a board of governors who sit as an apex structure, almost like a general assembly, right? And each country has two members who sit on that board of governors. One is a substantive member, one is an alternate member. And by practice, the people who sit in that governing body are the governor of the central bank as the substantive member, and then you have, of course, because remember that the central bank is in charge of your country's monetary policies, and then the minister in charge of financial affairs, so like our CS Treasury, okay. So that is the IMF. So you see, you can't call that a multinational. It's owned by the members, okay. So and so it's a lending institution and usually a lender of last resort. But Wahome can tell us more.
Professor.
About, sorry?
Professor.
Sorry?
So you can just continue.
I thought I heard. Sorry? I keep hearing somebody speaking.
I think there's a disruption being caused by one of the participants, but I think Keegan is dealing with it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So that is so that's basically the structure of the IMF. Okay. So when we understand that it's a membership organization of which Kenya itself is a member. And at any one time, the IMF can lend to any one of the members. And usually it comes in...
Sorry for that. Keegan, I think Keegan is dealing with that again. We are extremely sorry. It's just one of the participants failing to maintain.
And it's in a different language. I don't know what's going on.
Yes, we are dealing with it at the moment as we speak.
Okay. So IMF usually... Wow. Okay. Is this what they call Zoom bombing? This is not, although it's not Zoom. Okay.
I'm sorry. We'll have the host mute everyone. Yeah, Keegan, as we speak. Just. I think it has been dealt with. Again, we are extremely sorry. I think he's been removed, and sorry, Madam Daisy, I think we could continue from this point. I think he gets removed and then he keeps joining, so.
I know, gosh, has this ever happened before?
It's been well, but then it's one of the students who apparently it's trying to cause chaos.
Well,
But
well, I'm very sorry about that. So I was saying that so the IMF usually comes in to support countries. I mean, it's members when they experience economic shocks. If there's, let's say, a recession, if there there's catastrophes and all kinds of things, so that countries are able to continue to manage their economies. So when we understand this, then we will better understand that IMF does not come into your country. So like they can't come in and impose conditionalities or stuff like that. You enter into agreements. So your country actually goes to them. It's like the way if you are in trouble, you need a bailout, you actually go to maybe like your SACCO, where you are a member. So Kenya has actually gone because Kenya is in fiscal distress. And if you have cared to look at our budget, right? You look at budget estimates. I think the revenue estimates were that we were going to collect, I think, 1.9 trillion shillings. And the budget is for 3.2 trillion. So you're talking about 1.2 trillion deficit. Yani that's what you've planned for 3.2 trillion. You're planning, you're estimating your revenues, and even those revenue estimates in the context of the current situation we're in were very ambitious and rather unrealistic. Okay, so you're talking about 1.2 trillion deficit, budget deficit. Okay, so our debt obligations alone are 1 trillion shillings. It's 1 trillion and it's like 1.02 trillion against a revenue target of 1.9 trillion. So if you were even just to pay your debt, you're left with 900 billion, So, I mean, that is enough to tell you that we were in a crisis, not looking at, other obligations, disbursements to counties, national government obligation stand at about 1.7 trillion. So you see, at that point, you don't even have money for anything. So Kenya needs to go to the IMF, okay? So this is not a multinational thing. It is a country that has gone, a member state that has gone to seek assistance to be able to shore it up economically so that we do not face eventual collapse. So if IMF were to cave into Kenya's demands and say, stop lending Kenya, then we would be left to the consequences of the fiscal mismanagement that Parliament has allowed to happen. And I say Parliament, why? Because as the custodians of the public purse, they have a responsibility to check the executive. The country has not gone into fiscal distress suddenly, It has been a process. They have allowed the executive to build in deficits over the years. And even with the development expenditure, we are not seeing returns. We know that one of the biggest problems that we have is that our government sought expensive debts, commercial debts. Now, those are the real dangers because they are short-term and they are expensive and they must be paid. They are not like these other debts like the IMF and other bilateral and multilateral debts where you can renegotiate them. It's the kind of debt, if you default, you'll hear Kenya has been attached, take you. imeshikwa mahali kwa sababu ya deni. I mean, these are realities that can happen. Or somebody goes and attaches our embassy. I mean, these are some of the realities that could happen, you know? So we need to have a sober discussion, you know, because our government has had a reckless spending problem. Our problem is not even so much debt, because, you know, you can borrow responsibly, put that money to good use, and ultimately, build up your ability to run, your country, your economy well. And I want to also tell you, Stanley, that it's not all countries that run on debt. Do you know that Singapore, they have surplus budgets? So it is possible to have, responsible people in governance who can organize your country in such a way that we are able to see our money put to good use. So for me, the thing is, when we look at the conditions that have been put in, that those are the things that we need to look at, and how aggressively they will swing against the ordinary mwananchi, what it means, because of course there are conditions. Government cannot borrow and then go on a reckless spending spree. And government is being forced by IMF to tighten its belt. And what IMF is doing is actually what Parliament should have been doing. Reining in government and government expenditure, right? So that IMF is doing now the work that Parliament was supposed to do. So let me leave it at that, and then I can contribute again later.
Thank you, Madam Daisy. Mr. Wahoro, the IMF sounded an alarm about massive spike in inequality due to COVID-19 pandemic. The negotiations with the IMF for loans pushed for belt-tightening measures that could result in deep cuts to public healthcare systems and pension schemes, wage freezes, and cuts for public sector workers such as doctors, nurses, and teachers, and unemployment benefits like sick pay. Can the IMF be termed as destroying the very thing it is to protect by fueling inequality and poverty?
Oh dear. It is a tragedy that it's come to that. But the short answer is no, because as Daisy so eloquently put it, this we go for the money, but when you're broke and there's nowhere else to turn to, whoever you borrow from has his own conditions. And interestingly enough, those conditions have to do with what we should have done, as Daisy has also put forward, that we should have done this for ourselves, which is basically being financially disciplined, so that we didn't need to get to that. So what the IMF was basically talking about is something that's called fiscal consolidation, which is a fancy word for expenditure cuts. But unhappily for us, because we have such big debts, then what the IMF is saying is you need to do these structural changes to your budgeting, essentially to do, again, like Daisy covered, to get rid of what you call a deficit financing. In other words, cut back your expenditure, to cut your cloth to your measure. But of course, by doing that, if government cuts back, then the people who suffer are the ordinary mwananchi. Because by and large, there's something called moral hazard economics. It's also part of a bigger conversation called the agency problem. In other words, when a government makes a decision to borrow, that person who makes the decision to borrow is not the one who gets to suffer for the decision of borrowing. And that agency and moral hazard in government is key to understanding why, by and large, nothing really changes. Because even in my time at Treasury, I could say no, I could say we'll not borrow. But I am but an officer of the state. So if a decision is made elsewhere to borrow, then that's what will happen. Because it's very rare in life where you get to be in a position where you can borrow, but you have no personal responsibility or liability for paying it back. That becomes the quintessential challenge with countries. And whenever you see a debt problem like ours, it's really, you can really boil it down to that. And to the point about the parliament, Parliament had a moral and constitutional duty to oversee the executive. However, we live in a political environment, and therefore even that parliament is itself beholden to the same executive. So all these questions, and in fact, part of the reason why I actually didn't mind seeing Kenyans protesting to the IMF loudly is that it brought the question of we as citizens finding an outlet to basically speak beyond our borders, that some certain things need to change. And so to that extent, yes, of course, it don't make much of a difference. But that conversation that was first directed at the IMF, I think is one that is now one that needs to be part of our internal debate in terms of the best way forward to overcome this debt. So now we're going to suffer the consequences of that. But then I think I'd pose a question. What is the solution? And the solution true is Parliament. But there's also a solution around the question about how the executive is managed, how the executive operates in this environment. You will see almost in every country, the debt problem is never a legislative question. It is almost always an executive question, because it's the executive that wields the power of expenditure. And because it's the one with the power of expenditure, with a moral hazard on top of that, then you can see how that can become a bit of a challenge to rein it in. So the conversation, I think, belongs elsewhere. But I think for the first time, Kenyans are really engaged on this. Maybe one thing I've been unhappy, sad I've not heard, is there's no political platform that talks about debt in a way that is coherent. And to me, that should be a political platform. Someone should be able to come and tell us, we're going to borrow. This is how we're going to make sure, for example, we don't have leakages through corruption, because much of this debt, I'm sure, has managed private pockets, and you and I are going to pay for
that. Thank you for that as well. Just in the same spirit and in the same area, we would like to direct a question to Mr. Bruno now. Media sources in Nairobi have reported that Kenyans are enraged by the government's decision to secure $2.3 billion from the International Monetary Fund. Over 200,000 Kenyan citizens are said to have signed an online petition demanding a cancellation of the IMF loan. Kenyans are raising concerns about a government debt associated with IMF loans, which get to be passed on to citizens in all forms of taxes. One of the country's publications, the Business Daily, reported that the international lender has now advised Kenya's treasury to impose a 16% value-added tax on fuel, doubling the current 8%. What are your thoughts then? Do you think governments are passing the burden of loans to taxpayers in form of taxes? So, Mr. Bruce.
Well, yes, and I think that's the short answer of it. I mean, the only way government raises money is through taxes. They don't do business whatsoever. So mostly, when you see, I think governments going to borrow is because they're, as I think the other panelists have been saying rightly, so it's because they're they're actually spending more there than they actually have. So, and the money government has is from taxes, the taxes they raise normally. So when you see that happening, then it means that taxpayers ultimately have to pay the ultimate price. About what you are talking about, that Kenyans, signing online petitions, and Daisy, I think, alluded to that fact that I think according to IMF's article of association, they only deal with the national treasury and by and large, I think the central bank of Kenya. So really, there is no public participation, so to say, on who determines whether this and that is going to be done, apart from what these two institutions will deliberate with IMF. But when it comes to taxes, there is also a question of instead of, there's a question. There kind of has always been this question of, are we really collecting taxes, or are we just getting loans out there, not collecting taxes where it does really matter? Because personally, I believe we don't collect taxes. Like, if we were to collect taxes, then it would mean we will relieve most of the taxpayers of these loans that we are trying to borrow, and ultimately they are the ones who are going to pay dearly, considering, looking at what the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority was saying the other day, that they are going to raise the amounts of levies that are being imposed on Kenyans in terms of taxes. Also, not just that, because one thing about petroleum is you raise the taxes in it, it has a multiply effect in the whole economy, because these are products that are now used in like all sectors of the economy. It's not just about buying the fuel if you're driving, because it's used for manufacturing, it's used for nearly all day-to-day production and everything. So it really does change the matrix of the economy as you are looking at it that way. So there is that question of collecting taxes and allowing Kenyans to not being overburdened by government wanting to pay taxes, to pay loans back. Because one of the reasons why if I'm working for the IMF, I wouldn't even hesitate giving Kenya money, is because I think according to our Public Finance Act, and I think many other countries, is the first thing you do after you collect money from the consolidated fund is you have to pay back the loans that you have. So, and if you read the IMF report, they said that Kenya is actually in a good position to pay back most of its loans, because as much as it's borrow Peter to pay Paul, where you are just getting money here and paying there so that you can continue to be in good books, then it also means that you are in that cycle where you are keeping on paying loans, and taxpayers are the ones who are being hurt by this cycle of you getting money here and paying back there. So there is that question that we need to collect taxes, and we need to not really kind of go down hard on the taxpayers. Mama Mboga, I think I was reading on the papers the other day how KRA wanted to impose a minimum tax on even Mama Mbogas, to tax capital, because they are really trying to look for money, because they can't find this money, and they want to pay back some of their loans. They want to finance the public wage bill that is there and everything. So they have to look for and most of the money, as Daisy also said, is being used to reservice some of the debt facilities that we had taken even before IMF. So now you start paying some of the debts that are more threatening than the IMF. And what you are left with, then it means you can't pay salaries. It means county governments are missing, 66 billion, because Treasury can't send their money. Why? Because most monies are being used to service loans, and you need to collect more taxes. So you want to look at any slightest of opportunities to collect the taxes that are there, being, trying to punish the common mwananchi as much as you can. So I think that's what I can say on your question, Stanley.
Thank you, Bruno. Based, of course, on the discussion, a question on debt arises, and I would like to pose this question to Madam Daisy, because Bruno has alluded to the fact that IMF in its report stated that Kenya are in a position to pay back their debts. But then the current debt levels in the country are worrisome. Do you then think that Kenya's debt is sustainable?
I think Kenya's debt has been unsustainable for a long time. And not only is it unsustainable, it's also what the debt, what the money is going to do, what we borrow and then do with that money. Okay, so this is where it's problematic. We've seen that the expensive loans, like the Exim Bank loan that was borrowed for the SGR, yet it's called it's called Standard Gauge Railway. Standard Gauge Railway is not making money, so we're paying this expensive loan, and we're not getting returns. The Eurobond, we still, it's still a bit, hazy about where some of it went. The first Eurobond. So we're looking at expensive loans and no payback. But I think that it's also important to understand that these stringent measures that we are going through with the IMF has come to bail us out, but also to buy us time to reorganize ourselves and sort of like outgrow our debt, So we need to be looking at what it is that we can do to try and come out of that arrangement, okay? And remember that this program, by the way, it's not a short program. The IMF program is set to run until 2024, okay? So it's a long-term program, and we're supposed to implement some medium-term structural reforms, okay? So some of the things that really need to happen, remember, if you look at, and this is also problematic because we are not getting transparency from government. We just see, headlines out there, IMF have approved ABCD facility, for Kenya, but we have not yet broken down what exactly that means for Kenya in terms of the things that need to happen, because those are some of the things that we actually need to track in terms of what's going to happen and what it means to us. Like, for instance, some of the financial evaluation of some of the state-owned entities. Remember, one of the things, I think when President Uhuru was in his first term, he set up a task force that was to look at the restructuring of parastatals. It was led by the then Member of Parliament from Mandera, Abdikadir, and it made recommendations about restructuring the whole state corporations and parastatals. Nothing was done about that. Now we are back to the same table because you see, also the politics is at play here. Remember that many of these state corporations are also used as entities for patronage and political rewards, so that they are now not even doing what they are supposed to do. They are not making money for government. They have now become money pits, okay? So those are some of the conditionalities that IMF have put in place. The financial evaluation of our largest state-owned entities. So you're looking at Kenya Airways, and Kenya Airways is a money pit, complete money pit. Kenya Railway, Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Power, KenGen, and a few others. And even public universities, by the way, as you sit there, I think University of Nairobi, KU, Moi, if I'm not wrong, because the government underwrites, guarantees some of their obligations. So these are some of the things. Then, of course, the tightening. So what we need to see is a comprehensive economic management plan, a debt management plan coming from the Treasury, By the way, a lot of the stuff that goes on with the IMF, they put on their website. We are not seeing a lot of transparency from government. We know that, like, for instance, Parliament, we are supposed to, the IMF has required an audit of the COVID-19 funds, yeah, the operationalization of anti-corruption laws, public officer and ethics acts addressing the issue of allowances and these perks for public officers and state officers, because that's another scandal, you know, those ninis, allowances, anti-corruption, the Anti-Corruption Act, anti-money laundering, and I don't know, can't remember which one else. But so we should be monitoring how fast the state is doing these reforms, because many of these reforms are supposed to happen in this year 2021. Okay, so we must also look at what is Parliament prioritizing. I mean, we've got to ask ourselves, in the midst of this economic crisis, why would Parliament be wasting its time with things like BBI and other non-priority issues? What we need to be hearing is about the IMF program and the conditions that have been put. You're talking about taxation, but remember that one of the requirements that the Treasury agreed to, and if Treasury agreed to it, means Parliament agreed to it, was we need to remove. Remember when President Uhuru last year, when COVID started, and he announced the tax relief measures. Remember that he committed to having these tax measures in place until June this year, right? But then it was removed in January. So those exemptions, were one of among the conditions were those exemptions must be removed. They must be restored, and the government is supposed to broaden its tax base, which is why they made the recommendation for that minimum tax. You know, and if those measures are insufficient, they are supposed to raise taxes on things. So when you see the tax raised on LPG and all these things, those are part of those measures. So the cost of living is going to get high. But what is it that we can do? Because this is the time that we are supposed to be engaging our representatives, although, you know, even them, they don't seem to know that they represent the people. But we are supposed to be engaging our representatives to see what can be done. How are we going to, in the midst of the COVID situation, the stringent IMF conditionalities, what can we do to generate productivity, you know, and demand transparency and accountability on the side of government, and demand that our leaders begin to address priority issues, you know? We need to look at the policy measures, the reforms, and all that, you know, how they're delivering on these reforms. Because otherwise, if not, we are going to see a lot worse happening. Last year alone, I think over 2 million Kenyans went into into poverty, you know? So what are the plans? What government, as government is making these commitments, which actually are swinging very aggressively against the ordinary mwananchi, what are they doing to try and cushion us from further, you know, to cushion people from, you know, further job losses, income losses, and all that? So it is an important conversation that we must have. Politicians must not be, the members of parliament must not be allowed to continue to push or to just allow the executive with its grandiose ideas. I think even one of the conditionalities of the IMF is there are like about 500 projects that they are supposed to stop. Which projects are these? And what commitments did Treasury get? We need to know. What are the commitments? You saw that one of the commitments was to increase, I think, triple university fees, and they also reduced the amount of money going into health. So all these things are interrelated. They are not isolated things. And I like what Mr. Ndohho said, that this should be a political issue. This should be a campaign issue. People are telling us 2022, And they're just saying, my tribe, me, yes, our group. No, these are the issues. And you young economic scholars should be about this business, not just at the national level, even the counties. We saw recently counties were given the green light to borrow loans. So now we are going to take this mess down to the counties. Who is going to be the watchdog there? Where are the economists to go down there and begin, to work on regulations within the health sector, the public finance management at that level? We need to really have a very serious conversation as Kenyans and make our politics more issue-based, because whether we like it or not, we are being forced to face very, very serious issues. And the irresponsibility of our politicians is also mirrored by the irresponsibility of citizens who refuse to demand that our politicians and representatives do what they are supposed to do, and that is manage our affairs so that we have an enabling environment for us to thrive. We must not allow our country to go in this direction. So we should take advantage of this opportunity that we are being bought by the IMF, despite the tough conditions, to begin to also think about what can we do to generate productivity and come out from under this. Over.
Thank you, Madam Daisy. Ultimately, in light of these facts, a fundamental question arises. What should governments do in the face of financial crises, especially those exacerbated by the current COVID-19 pandemic? Mr. Wahoro, what are your thoughts on this? Mr. Wahoro, are you still around?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
What can governments do? Look, I'd like to change this. I think I'd like to change this conversation. It's not that we do not know what's wrong. It's not that we do not know what ails us. I'm talking to intellectuals. You're the next generation. I'll pose a question to you as young people. My generation is one that's taken the debt, right? So the president is my age mate. Unfortunately, for you be the ones to pay it back. I'll be retired, I'll probably go to my farm, I'll enjoy peace, and then leave the burden to you. So the question I think I'd like to turn around is to you and ask you this question. What do you do in the here and now as the next generation of thought leadership in this country to begin to get involved in this conversation? I think quite apart from it not being, debt not being a political agenda item, I'll pose it to you that it needs to be a generational question. And maybe to you, Adam, in the light of your education, understanding how things work, talking to the elders like us, what are steps that you can take both to mitigate, also to begin to roll back some of these questions, some of these problems? I've mentioned the fact that Kenya has been on a 20-year building boom, race towards building its infrastructure assets. Now that was a decision that was made right back in Kibaki's era, and the current president essentially just turbocharged. Now he's been very clear from the beginning that his legacy was basically infrastructure. Now we can have a debate about whether it's good value for money or not, but the truth of the matter is Kenya has developed a lot of infrastructure. And what we're seeing now, just to maybe put a slightly positive spin to it, is that no country ever develops without first investing in infrastructure. The debates can be had about whether it was the best way to spend the money or not. The second part of that is that once the infrastructure is in place, then the economy can grow. But in the meantime, and this is where we are now, do not have the luxury of waiting. And so my question to you is that, what are things, both in terms of getting involved in the decision-making arena of this country? Part of the reason why I'm glad and happy to share the stage with Mr. Bruno Ortiato. I think Mr. Ortiato gives us a good example of a sort of activism I want to see among young people. Secondly, seek out your leader, seek out to be mentored, seek out to engage your leaders and ask those questions, because the Constitution has a provision that whatever financial decisions are made, they must be intergenerationally equitable. And so there's a conversation there that I cannot have with my peers in government, but you can. And that's around you as a youth. We talk about the youth college. If you as a youth and as a body and as a corporate entity, or to say to us older folk that there's an intergenerational equity issue here, it's actually a constitutional issue. I think this debate might go in a very different direction. Madam Mudrizi talked about the BBI debate. I think it's a good debate to have. I think we need to spread out the leadership of this country. But again, it's an intergenerational question. These debts that we are taking, we're getting value for money. Do you, as the young people and the majority in this country, have a say in very carefully selecting the right sort of leaders who thoughtfully think through some of these issues and are able to address them? Ultimately, there's some questions that only you can answer. And I think these are part of the conversation about you now being the adults, even as we are fading into, some of us are fading into retirement, that those questions should stop being academic. They should be real. They should be ones that are prosecuted in the public square, so to speak. And so, yes, Kenya has a problem, but the Kenya has also made a decision to invest in infrastructure, most of which will not benefit my generation, but yours. But is that a good trade-off? I think your debates that you start here must be one you should hear a lot more of. We don't hear enough of the youth of this country as a body corporate, as a group, speaking to these issues and making demands around the sort of leadership you want. Are you going to go after it? Are you going to make sure that you yourselves also put yourselves up to lead this nation and begin to correct what you may see as intergenerational mistakes that maybe my generation has made? Ultimately, I think to your listeners and viewers, my challenge remains that we've done our bit with all its problems, but I think the time has come also for this bigger intergenerational debate to happen.
Thank you so much. Those are really powerful words. Quickly, in 2 minutes, I would like Mr. Bruno Ortiato to please share with us what he thinks are some of the things that the youth can do to bring the change that they desire to see, the change that we desire to see. What are some of the things that we can do to kickstart this process and ensure that there is ultimately this change that we desire to see?
All right, thank you, Stanley. I think much or less also has been said by the previous speakers, but there is a whole question of being engaged, getting to know what's happening. Like, I think many young people need to be told that to be ignorant is not to be cool, because many young people like being ignorant and just being not in the know, like, and they don't really care about what's happening. The same generation of us, I think I belong to that generation that says, I don't care about what government is chosen or who comes into politics. Yet when the prices are going up and they own a demio, and they start complaining, that how come fuel prices are this high, and they don't really get to care so much to know that politics affects everything, in a day-to-day life. So that's the first thing. I think people should be curious. We should remain curious. I think we should continue having more of such engagements moving forward, in terms of just trying to bring people to, talk to us, and also us allowing us to share some of the opinions that we have. The second thing, I think, has to be with complaining, because this might be a very unpopular opinion, though, that I believe that many young people, especially those who might want to care just a little bit, might be so much complaining about what's happening. Like that's why Kenyan Twitter is like, like no one wants to be the topic of discussion any other day, because it's full of young people and they complain day in, day out. I think there is need to look at what's being done and try to understand. For instance, I mean, what the previous speaker was just talking about, infrastructure. How does this affect us? I had a friend, I think, who came from Zimbabwe, and I think I was sharing with him, and he was telling me how he he is a young person, that he was amazed when he got to Kenya to see the kind of infrastructural developments that was taking place, and him noting that in his country, the first road actually is being constructed by his government this year, after, I don't know, maybe 10 or so years of nothing being done before. So there is a whole question of getting to know, what is your government actually doing for you? How is this infrastructure going to benefit me? Is it good? I mean, getting to also know that, for instance, many young people in Kenya don't know that certain things like even electricity, there are countries, many countries in Africa don't enjoy. Of course, we complain about KPLC a lot, and rightfully so, but I mean, go to Nigeria, go to Ghana is trying here. There are so many countries. Sudan doesn't, I doubt it has stable electric grid, power grid, I mean. So that in Nigeria, it's news if there's electricity for a whole day. Like, so there is need to know about what's really happening, what the government has invested in. I tend to understand much or less what Uhuru was trying to do in terms of infrastructural development. Of course, the problem now came in that it was hijacked, in that many people saw those infrastructural developments as a means of getting more monies and, trying to enrich themselves. So with more money comes more corruption. So there was that. But I think ultimately, if you look at it long term, and it's also a problem of democracy that it's so short term. People tend to look at things short term. That's why even populism is kind of thriving. So if you look at it long term, you might see a little bit of good things being talked about. Then I think finally there is a whole question on I think just being engaged in what's happening. I understand Madam Daisy and the Linda Katiba initiative. Those who believe in it, I can join such an initiative, and try to champion for such views, at least to try to engage in terms of civic education, to try to understand what's your role as a citizen, as a voter, because I also still believe many young people don't know even the power of the vote, considering we are the highest demographic, So there is that where we need also to be engaged in terms of what's happening in politics and what's not. So yeah, that's, I think, what I would say about the question.
Thank you, Bruno. At this point, we would like each of the panelists to give their closing remarks. Please, let's try to keep it under 1 minute because time is much gone. Yes, we'll start with Bruno and then Mr. Wahoro, and we'll finish with Madam Daisy in that order. Thank you.
All right. I think on the topic of the day about IMF and the effects on the economy moving forward, the major thing I would like us to talk about, I think, moving forward, is how it might have a toll on the human resource. And looking at it from the sense that, for instance, as you might be aware, the public service is they're not employing anymore. And there are people who have been there for ages, and, it, of course, once they retire, there'll be a lot of crises in terms of the spaces that will be left in. And when you look at some of the measures IMF is trying to tell us to adopt, like trying to reduce the workforce, to IMF, 300 people is just a statistics. When they talk about 300 people, they just talk about a number. But if you come and, the cultures are different in Europe, in Kenya, too different. In Kenya, if you talk about 300 people, you're not just talking about 300 people, because these are livelihoods. many people depend on those people. So like I believe can vote for this. If anyone is working in public service, their salary is feeding about, because the dependency ratio in this part of the world is so high. So you are looking at actually destroying a lot of lives. So there is need, I think, moving forward, to engage the government, especially us young people, on the gap that is being created in terms of public service, and to make sure that we get engaged, to get trained, to get these jobs. There's that need where we need to get more young people. I mean, Kinyua is good. Kinyua has been there for a very long time. Who will be the next Kinyua if Kinyua retires or anything so happens to him? You know, he's been there, he's good, but who can do what he does? Who has he trained for that job? We don't want an event like, I think, what happened in Berkeley sometimes back, where such a thing happens, then they call back people who are retired, they hire them on contracts, and when they hire someone on contracts, I think this, now I'm speaking like a unionist, the terms are not as they used to be. They can exploit you to their biggest of chances if need be. So there is need of us young people trying to push through the civil societies, and even through writing, like I tried doing, and also just this kind of engagements, to try to push for us to be incorporated in public service, and to demand more accountability on what's happening, especially with our finances. Yeah.
Thank you, Bruno. We would move to Mr. Wahoro. Excuse me, Mr. Wahoro, you are muted.
Okay, sorry. I want to speak to you as a generation, as the next generation. I want to take a very different time. Bruno talked about the mentality. I think it's very true. But out of adversity comes opportunity. And if you look and internalize that statement, I think this could be the greatest opportunity in your life. And so for all the problems and the challenges that you hear about this country, it's true that if you go to other countries in Africa, it gives you perspective. But to you as a generation, I may give you the challenge. First, stop complaining. Second, organize yourself. Thirdly, get into business and apply your brain. And by that I mean pick agriculture, pick retail, pick anything, but you guys have been trained. You've proven yourselves to be the elite as far as the intellectual capabilities are concerned. Out of this adversity, I believe is likely to be the greatest opportunity this country has ever seen. Because two things have happened in the last 7 years. The whole of the Kenyan population has been weaned away from depending on government. Now you can see that as a tragedy, but I see that as an opportunity, because it means once you redirect your energy to problem solving, you will be in a much better place as a generation to make a huge difference. And remember, once you start making the difference on the ground, even the top listens to you. I encourage you particularly in 3 areas. Get into agriculture. The last time I had anyone talked anything nice about agriculture was maybe in my youth. But I can tell you for free that when I was born, this country was a population of 9 million. Now we are a population of 50+ million. All those are people to be fed, and nutrition is a big issue in this country. The cost of food is an issue in this country. Apply your best brains in agriculture, apply your best brains in the service industry, and apply your best brain in the social sector. And by social sector, I mean everything from education to health. Find ways to make a business out of serving your country. I cannot emphasize it enough. Every generation has had adversity. This is your time to turn this adversity into an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Wahoro, and we would finally finish with Madam Daisy.
Thank you so much. I want to encourage all of us. We have this abstract person that we speak of called Wanjiku. but we are all Wanjiku, because none of us wants to live in a country that is not functioning well and that is not working for us. And I want to tell you, I've had the privilege of traveling to so many different parts of this country. I mean, there's very few places that I haven't gone. And I will tell you that we haven't even begun to tap Kenya's potential. I'm talking about Kenya's human potential and Kenya's resource potential. There is a lot of idle land, idle, opportunity out there, and we must discover it. Kenya is a country that is worth fighting for 100 times over, hands down. We have such a fantastic country. And it is time for us to really focus our energies in the right place. Yes, it is important that we learn to hold our leaders accountable and speak truth to power. But we must learn to walk and to chew gum, meaning that as we are holding our leaders accountable, that we are also making positive contributions and not just, looking at the negative side. There are huge opportunities. And I have learned that challenges are a crucible for greatness. Right now, it is not Kenya that is being ravaged. It is the whole world. And because of that, we are becoming more insular as countries shut their borders because they are afraid of infections. So now we are literally on our own. But it is an opportunity to begin to serve ourselves, to begin to look at what do we have that we can use to build our country. Because the most important thing is that we must continue to be productive. We can't sit on our hands. We must look for avenues of becoming creative with productivity. And with the stringent conditions that are being imposed on our governments, we know and we understand that government that was once upon a time the largest employer is no longer so. More and more we're moving away from that. So we need people to to capture that entrepreneurial spirit. We need people to become innovative, and Kenyans are innovative. Some of the things that have put Kenya on the map, other than athletics, is Kenya's innovation, the innovation of our young people. And so that's what we need to look at, and look at policies. How do we inform policies that actually allow for that creativity to thrive? And so I want to thank you for this opportunity. I have enjoyed being here. And I want to encourage all of us that it's not all doom and gloom, because every cloud has a silver lining. And we must ride on that silver lining to transform Kenya, to use this as an opportunity to actually transform Kenya. There is always a way. And me, as a born-again believer, I know that Yahweh knows how to make where there seems to be no way, there is a way. He can make the way. So let's look to him. And let's also build values, because I think one of the biggest problems that we have in Kenya, and unfortunately even among young people, is a very poor set of values. We need to embody the values of honesty, integrity, hard work, patience, stamina, and Kenya will change for the better, and you will be able to raise your children in a better Kenya than the one we have right now. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Madam Daisy. At this point, I would like to first thank our panelists for the wonderful insights and pieces of advice. It's been a truly informative and transformative session, and we've really gained so much, and we can only say thank you. I mean, it's not enough, but we are really grateful, and really grateful, and say thank you. We would also like to thank our participants for your patience and for listening all throughout, save for a few minor disruptions, which we thankfully were able to overcome. At this point, I would like to wish all of us a nice evening until the next Econ Scholar panel session. Thank you and have a lovely night.
Good night and goodbye.